Once I reach 1,000 subscribers, I will always have a live chat on the first Friday of the month at 8 p.m. So please subscribe, click on the bell, and let's get 1,000 subscribers very soon. Good morning and welcome back to Planet Althistory. Today we are going to discuss what if the Spanish Civil War never happened. Spain was a very divided, unstable and weak country in the 19th century. Once a great power, Spain lost almost the last of its colonies after its defeat in the Spanish-American War. It was technically a monarchy, but power had frequently been in the hands of military dictators. The country was bitterly divided. The acute poverty of the Spanish people meant that many were drawn to very extreme ideologies, such as communism, for instance. These ideologies call for popular governments and the redistribution of resources, such as land and wealth. And Spain, until even nowadays, has a lot of very noble people, in the sense that they are part of the nobility and they own a huge wealth. By 1930, Spain was again bitterly divided into social and now even ideological lines. Many parts of Spain also had a strong regional identity. A new constitution was introduced in 1931, and it was a liberal document that guaranteed human rights and basic freedoms. The constitution also separated the church and state. The state held elections again in 1932, and in these first elections under the Constitution of 1933, an alliance of right-wing and center-right parties came to power. But this time, instead of having a failed right-wing government, this government would somehow be able to strengthen its position and actually be able to win much of the army to their side, and former imperialists, nationalists, as well as someone like Franco. So what if the Spanish Civil War never happens? With a twist that it will become still a nationalist type of Spain. In OTL, people like Franco made a plot to have a coup in around 1936. But this time the tactics would be different, and it would involve the infiltration of the current government. The more extreme element of this government would use the strikes of the left and the economic collapse as an opportunity to declare a state of emergency in Spain, and a semi-authoritarian government would be established with the help of the army. Much of the left would be arrested or be sent to the remaining colonies such as Sahara, or immigrate to France or Mexico. Those within the government who would not respect the state of emergency would just disappear or be displaced. The army would make sure of it, and slowly but surely people like José Antonio, the guy who was the main head of the Falange or the Phalangists, and Franco from the Spanish army would form some type of diarchy. A diarchy is a system where you have two heads of states, basically. Of course, in this scenario they will not officially be head of state, but they will be the two guys who have the main power. You will have the political wing and also the military wing, and both of these, they will not clash against each other in this scenario, but they will rather be a complement to each other. This would mean that corporatism would be more developed and more exclusive from capitalism. Franco stated that corporatism would be not exclusive from capitalism and that both could be one, or they could just work together, whereas if we will have the Phalangists, they would try to develop it as some type of third way or national syndicalism where both capitalism and communism are rejected. With Franco not being the political leader of this new nationalist Spain, we would have in José Antonio a leader who would be clearly fascist but also anti-conservative. So in this sense, José Antonio could be maybe much closer to parties like the Nazi Party in Germany. And it will clearly be a shift from this conservative revolution or from this strong reactionary wing towards clear fascism, because Franco was not a clear fascist. Spain would in general become more violent and many people would die or be imprisoned. I think that without the Spanish Civil War, but with someone like José Antonio in power, who said if this has to be achieved through violence, we shall not be stopped by violence, we would see similar numbers of dead people as during the Spanish Civil War. Spain would have a similar political climate as the USSR with Stalin. After having a comfortable and strong position in Spain due to terror and fear, Spain would probably try to forcefully industrialize and build up their army, as well as spies and many other things, because they would actually need to keep their population calm. And in a way it would also give them a fair advantage with other countries, because they would test most likely a lot in their own country, but without the point where they will have to destroy their own infrastructure as it happens in a civil war. At this point it is very likely that Spain would enter an alliance with Italy and also with Portugal, later on probably also with Germany. They might consider taking Portugal and annexing it, but Spain would be too afraid that the French and the British could intervene, so why not have a country like Portugal as an ally, just to be calm for the moment being. Anti-Semitism wouldn't be a big thing in Spain, and without the civil war, Spain would have a strong army, have an improved infrastructure, an industrial plan, allies, and all Spain needed would be time, just like Italy. Germany would still do the same thing, but with Spain and Italy in the Axis power, it is possible that after invading Poland and France, the two Latin allies would ask Germany for more time, which the Germans would guarantee if Italy would drop some of their plans, such as Greece and Yugoslavia. Funnily enough, this could lead to the entrance of Yugoslavia to the Axis powers, and Operation Barbarossa would be postponed for, let's say, 1 more year. The focus would be right now on the Mediterranean. Both Spain and Italy would be able to take Malta or Gibraltar, even Cyprus if it's possible, and assert a better control over northern Africa with the help of Spain. The Canary Islands as well as the Sahara would serve as an important first post for the Fortress Europe plan of the Nazis. The Atlantic Wall would become longer and even include countries like Portugal, who at this time would be threatened in becoming parts of the Axis. There was just no choice for Portugal, obviously. At this point, we would have Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Yugoslavia, Vichy France, Hungary, Slovakia, Japan, Manchuria, and the reorganized government of China as one fighting bloc. However, Operation Barbarossa would still happen and the US would still intervene, but Britain would be almost in its knees, not being able to get supplies from the empire and basically being locked on their own island. Instead of 1943, we would see a turning point in around 1944 or 1945, but it would be a very slow turning point. With more manpower and stability, the Axis could inflict a huge blow to the USSR, but Japan would be knocked out as of in OTL, and the Soviets could then in around 1946 and 47 make more pressure on the Axis powers in the West. Britain would wait for the US, and the US would not land in Normandy as in OTL, but this time they will island hop from the Azores to the Canary Islands, Madeira, and then they will land on Portugal. Portugal would try to switch sides early on and probably also sabotage many attacks on British targets or miss them on purpose, explaining that they were forced to be part of the Axis as they would then face an invasion from Spain. Maybe the Allies would buy it or not, but at this moment they would just take it as a positive point and just have at least some military access on Portugal, which would certainly be a very good start for the invasion on Europe. A land war in Spain would be problematic for the Allies, but with their advantage in terms of manpower, technology, and the fact that they had no true two-front war and an ally like Portugal, they would eventually beat Spain and face heavy resistance in the Pyrenees. Around 1946 or 47, the Allies would land in Normandy or even Brittany, and together with the French resistance, they would be able to take much of France. Then there is another thing. The Soviets would also clean up all of Europe, Eastern Europe, and some smaller powers like Yugoslavia, they would try to wipe peace, and bigger powers like Italy would probably try the same. Because remember that Spain and Italy, they would be able to cut British supplies and also have a bigger dominance in the Mediterranean, so we will not see an invasion of Italy from the Allies. The Allies might decide to wipe peace Italy and Yugoslavia because they knew that without enough forces they would not be able to stop the Soviets from taking all of Germany. So as in OTL, the US already had plans to get first to Berlin, but they were stopped by the Rundstedt offensive or the Ardennen offensive. So in this timeline, as we will have still the same administration in the US, we will probably have the same logic behind, so thus we will have white peace with Italy and Yugoslavia. The stronger last efforts and offensives, they would be made in the Eastern Front, because the Germans, they were more afraid to be occupied from the Soviets than from the Allies. And in 1948, there would be the earliest day for a Nazi capitulation, and around 1950 we might see the latest date for such a capitulation. I think that in this timeline, due to a much longer war and more resources being wasted in this war, the British Empire would cease to exist much faster, and the French colonies would probably get independent also much faster. Portugal could save their face and not lose their colonies immediately, whereas Spain would probably lose Equatorial Guinea and Sahara to France. Morocco would be much bigger, and Equatorial Guinea would be part of Gabon. Spain would get their monarchy back. The king would be the king of the Spanish, not of Spain, but every region, greater region, would be almost completely autonomous. The Spanish system would be similar as the one in Belgium. Portugal, Spain, France, Belgium, Netherlands and Luxembourg, as well as Western Germany, would become important allies to the US, together with Britain, while Italy and Yugoslavia, they would stay as the odd countries, but if there would be a heavy war against communism, they would rather be allies with the NATO, but this would be a very last resort. Greece might join NATO at some point, just like Turkey, because I don't think that they would have some butterflies included in their political system. And I think that even though both countries would be dictatorships, they would be tolerated just like Portugal, because if Portugal would switch sides, I also don't believe that Salazar would just be taken away. because it would just be too difficult to do so, as he was very popular in the 30s. Overall, I think that the decolonization process would happen earlier. We would have a shorter Cold War, but overall most things would be the same, except that Spain would be a more federalized country, whereas Italy would only open up around 1970 or maybe in the 80s, together with the Eastern Bloc, because with a heavier war the Soviet Union would not be able to sustain all the allies and also communist revolution worldwide. So we would have probably some political evolutions happening much earlier, whereas other things would happen later in this timeline. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to like and subscribe, leave a comment, support me also on Patreon, and join my forum, forum.planetalthistory.ga. Until next time on Planet Alt History.